I used to think that there was something like really weird and wrong with me. I felt disconnected from people. I couldn't express myself without getting sad or angry. And I kept finding myself like surrounded by negative, cold, damaged people. And I literally thought that just like magically I attracted them. But it turns out I was showing some super specific signs that my childhood had damaged me. And I thought all these signs were just me, But it turns out they're common, they're normal symptoms that a lot of adults get when they grew up with trauma. And the name for the cluster of symptoms is complex PTSD. You may have been diagnosed with it, you may not have, but you might relate to some of the signs. I struggled with this all my life, these problems, but I only learned the name for them about 10 years ago, and that's just changed everything for me. All at once, I was like, complex PTSD, that is what I have. And it was like 30 pounds of shame just fell off my shoulders. It just melted and evaporated because I knew that what had been hard for me, it wasn't just like a random crazy reaction to life. It was a thing. It's a thing. It's called complex PTSD, and it's not my fault. Do you have this, or do you suspect you do? You may want to get checked out by a therapist for it. I can't diagnose you, but I can tell you what it can look like, the signs of complex PTSD. And there's a lot of things that you may not even have recognized before that they're connected to abuse and neglect in the past. And if you relate to the symptoms, then a lot of the stuff that I teach to heal, get re-regulated, start making positive changes, they apply to you whether or not you have the diagnosis or that's exactly what it is with you. Once you know that this is a thing, it can be a huge relief because it means it's not just you. And not only that, but if you struggle with these symptoms, it's not something that you caused. And when it comes to healing from all the ways that trauma has affected you, you are going to be the one to do it. There's nobody else who really can. You can get help, right? But the person who heals it is going to be you, even though you're not the person who caused this. And there's a lot you can do, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. You want to hear the signs? Okay. These are the super specific signs that can tell you that your childhood was damaged. One is you're always trying to read how other people are feeling. Are they mad at you? Are they thinking of leaving? This is called hypervigilance, and it's exhausting, right? If you do this, it takes a huge amount of energy, and it's kind of like a form of self-abandonment. It takes you out of your own experience, and all your energy and attention is being used to be like, what's everybody doing? What are they feeling? And it's so familiar, it'll almost feel like a second skin to a lot of people who are traumatized. And I used to have this pretty bad, and I couldn't even imagine a life where I wasn't totally thinking how other people were feeling. But one of the things that's harsh about that, not only is it tiring and, takes you out of your experience, but for other people, it feels like way too much focus. It can feel invasive, and it pushes them away. All right, number 2, super specific sign. When you feel overwhelmed or threatened, you lash out much harder than you should. Or maybe it's not lashing out. It's emotional dysregulation. It's an emotional reaction that could be anger. It could be fear, like go hide, right? It could be shame, just like crushing shame about something. But it's way out of proportion with the situation. And later you realize that. But in the moment, you think like you shouldn't react this way. But when you're in the middle of emotional dysregulation, it can feel like the only way that you're going to get relief from this intense emotional pressure, this feeling of like, I have to get justice. I have to get justice in this minute. I have to persuade this person that what they did was wrong. Like that urgency and intensity is one of the clues that you're in emotional dysregulation. And if you're not in an emergency, it's often a good time to delay, actually, to just say, hold on. I'm feeling kind of intense right now. I want to talk about this. Can I take 15 minutes? And you can use tools to re-regulate your emotions and come back. And I have a lot of, materials about that in a lot of my videos. But in this video, I just kind of want to go through and just tell you the sign. So that you're lashing out. You're getting very emotional about things to a degree that later you think, why did I do that? or you get a lot of feedback. And that's hard because, a lot of us got told that our emotions were too much, or, told to just cut it out and be silent and don't say anything. So it's very confusing when you're in the early part of your healing. Like, if I'm feeling really strongly, is it important, or am I emotionally dysregulated? Practice is what can help you with that. Number 3 is, after an intense emotional upset, you feel a strange kind of like blankness. I always talk about it like it feels like after it rains, a sort of quiet, fresh air feeling, like the storm has passed. But you're not upset and you're not happy. You're just flat. Yeah, it's like after a big rainstorm in the desert. I used to live in Arizona, and they have monsoons. And there's this like neutral time where it's like nothing after. It's like this intense thunder and lightning, and then nothing. I think migraines can feel like that sometimes too. I often wonder sometimes if intense periods of dysregulation and emotional dysregulation have some kind of neurological relationship to migraines. If you get migraines, I'll describe what it's like when it's coming. You start to get this weird feeling like everything's wrong, and you feel a little strange and distant from yourself. And then all of a sudden you get sort of like sucked into this space where you're not all here. You're totally just like dealing with the pain. You're sort of brought into yourself. And there's often, in addition to the physical pain of it, there's like an emotional well, like a yucky well of bad feeling comes up and until it passes. And a lot of people who had trauma as kids have migraines. We have a higher than normal rate of them. So I noticed that dysregulation can be like that too. It sort of comes on, like there's an aura, it's a feeling that it's coming, and then it comes. And then when the pressure is gone, but you haven't yet begun to feel the pain or the panic about having messed up relationships, there's this neutral feeling. And that can be one of the most dangerous times at all in terms of hurting people who love you. Because when you feel nothing, you can say anything. You're just like, I don't know. I don't need you. I don't need anybody. I'm packing my suitcase. By the time you're down the block, you're like, oh no, your heart comes back online. You have your feelings. You are yourself. You're like, what did I just do? And a lot of people who get emotionally dysregulated know this cycle where you go back and you're like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And sometimes it's too late, or sometimes the relationship has gone through so many cycles of this that you're both kind of ground down by it. And the great news is you can learn to re-regulate your emotions. But this is a sign that your childhood really did a number on you, that it gets like this in a repeated pattern. All right, number 4, when someone gives you a compliment or a gift, oh gosh, gifts, it makes you hugely uncomfortable. And if it's a compliment, you think, oh, they're just saying that. Maybe they're even trying to manipulate me. If it's a gift, it's this weird, I don't know about you, but sometimes I have and I'm getting better as I get older, and I'm a lot older than I used to be. But anticipating the gift, I would have a lot of anxiety. It won't be good enough. It won't indicate that they love me enough, especially like from a partner. And then the gift comes, and it's rarely like beyond your wildest dreams as a gift. It might be nice. It might be a little like not quite your thing or whatever, but the feeling of it is like this crushing disappointment. People who give you things think of you as someone who's like never happy. They get scared to even give you a gift. Do you have that? That could be a sign. Super specific, I know, but that something happened to you when you were a kid to traumatize you. All right, number 5, when you're around normal people who have their lives together, you feel like you just want to get out of there. Like they don't feel safe. You think they're judging you. They feel weird to you. You would never date them. That is how we end up dating people who are troubled, because that's what feels more comfortable to us early in our healing process for a number of reasons, right? It just feels like home. It feels like they're not going to reject you. I think people have different reasons for this, but I've had chats about this with the YouTube in the comment section, that when we reject or feel uncomfortable around people who have their lives together, the main feeling operating there is shame. Just feeling like, I don't know, these people are out of my league, therefore I hate them, and look down on them and find things to criticize about them. That's what I used to do anyway. And that's one of the pleasures of healing, is that you start to feel comfortable with many kinds of people, different social classes and countries and, cultures. And you can start to appreciate people despite the fact that they have more of something or less of something than you, including healing. A key thing that's operating when we pull away from people who seem functional is that we're isolating. When we pull away from people, it's often like a stress response. It feels stressful to be around them, and isolating is this like quick fix, like I'll just be alone and then the stress will go down. And that's true. But the thing is, long term, just isolating yourself is not a great solution to the problem of people. Very few people is that really what they want. Hey, it's me, and real fast, if you're watching my videos and wondering if maybe past trauma is having an effect on your life today, I want to share with you a list of signs that what you're struggling with now might be connected with neglect or abuse in childhood. It's good to know this because it can help you know that what's hard for you is normal and that healing is possible. So download my Signs of Childhood PTSD quiz by clicking the top link in the description section below. All right, number 6, you have an abandonment trigger that goes off at very small things. And I've definitely had this. I was literally abandoned as a kid several times, and I had an abandonment trigger. And when it was off, it's like a form of emotional dysregulation. It seems very real and necessary to feel that strongly in the moment, but it prompts you to do behaviors like begging, chasing, stalking, oh, please don't leave me. That, very quickly brings on shame. You don't get good results from it. It's out of character. It's like some old childlike impulse in you to try to get the people who take care of you not to go away. And having an overlay of emotions on the people in our lives today that's left over from how we felt when we weren't getting our needs met from parents when we were small creates a lot of problems in relationships. It's not realistic. We do it on, some of us, like, we do it to bosses, we do it to coworkers. We're like, why don't they love me unconditionally? It's like, well, they're not your dad, they're not your mom. So as we heal, we start to recognize the difference between the early relationships and what was there and what was missing, and new relationships, so that we can come to the new relationships with a clean slate without, a whole debt that people owe us based on what we didn't get when we were kids, because that's not something we can demand of other people. It pushes them away, and it's very unfulfilling too. It leads to a lot of frustration and tears to be like, come on, why can't I feel better because of anything that you're saying to me? If you find yourself feeling that way, it is like an indication, where you're just like, we've been talking for hours, I feel worse and worse, I just want you to say the thing or understand the thing. When that goes on and on to a point of desperation, I would just suggest take a break. You're in it. You're in that projection. And it's not possible when you're in that space to see with your whole brain like, oh, of course, I can't ask somebody who I'm merely dating to make up for that big deficit that I had early in life. But I could ask them, could we hang out and sit down together and talk for a while, or, eat some food? That there are things in present time that work, that when they're, trying to siphon off something that you needed from the past, it'll wreck the relationship. So abandonment triggers to small things, and I mean that's something like you text somebody and they don't text you back as quickly as you would like. You start to panic. They give you a look and you're like, oh God, they hate me. Not being invited to something that friends are doing, that's hard. That's not necessarily a small thing, but it's not life and death. And if you have this thing that the therapist Pete Walker calls abandonment melange, it's like a very intense reaction to feeling abandoned. Strong, strong emotions that may almost take you out of feeling like you are a human. Everybody's part of the world, but not you. You're cast out. It's like a core feeling. And it's a category of emotional flashback. And so not getting invited to something can trigger that. That's obviously hearkening back to some memory even before you had language of being left out, not cared for, actually abandoned when you were helpless. And then it leads you to think, oh, they didn't invite me. It's got to be because they hate me. It's got to be because I'm awful. So this doom thinking can kick in. This is a specific sign that something bad happened to you when you were little, where the little slights of life feel like life and death. We get very black and white thinking about it. All right, number 7, you catastrophize. You know that word? You keep obsessing and worrying about what could happen. All right, I'll give you an example. When I was a kid, my parents used to fight all the time, and very badly, violently. And it really scared me to death when they were fighting. And so a lot of times I was sort of in a panic that they were going to break up. And when I was 5, my grandmother was babysitting me while my parents were out. I don't know. I can't remember. I think they might have been out all night, like maybe they were on a trip or something, an overnight trip somewhere. And my grandmother, who I loved and made me feel very safe, was with me. But something happened where the bathroom sink was like dripping. It was dripping a lot. I don't know, a washer snapped or something. And she didn't know how to deal with it. And what she did, in fact, was call a family friend who was a plumber and say, could you come help us with this? And he ended up coming up at like 10 o'clock at night or something. It was after bedtime. And he fixed the sink and it was fine. But what was happening for me emotionally as a 5-year-old when that was happening is I was freaking out. The bathroom sink was leaking. I became completely afraid that the whole house was going to fill up with water. And I started to be able to visualize this. Oh, it's just a little like, it was like a pretty strong leak, but the drain was handling it quite well. But I was just freaking out. It's going to like come up. It'll just come up off the floor. It'll fill everything up. We won't be able to breathe. I wanted to go outside. My grandmother was like, no, this is going to be okay. But I was in full, I can remember the emotional feeling of just like, I remember that level of fear. And it's not something I've felt in adulthood that intense, this like, I'm going to die feeling over a leak in the sink. That is catastrophizing. And so it's distorted thinking, and we can forgive a 5-year-old, but it happens to us now in adulthood. And it's more than just being vigilant. It's where you walk down the street, like vigilant is like being mindful. Like I'm walking down the street, it's night, I got to pay attention to my surroundings. That's vigilant. All right. It's hypervigilant when you're sure that someone is lurking behind every corner. They're following you. You just know it. They're going to jump you. You can't see them. You can't hear them, but you know it's going to happen. That's hypervigilant. Your heart's pounding. You're already going into the scenario where it's happening. So, yeah, I did actually get jumped on the street once. And what's interesting about it is that after it happened, I never ended up hypervigilant about it. I ended up just vigilant at the normal level. I was somehow able to process the danger of it, which is weird because I did have like really bad PTSD. I was violently attacked. I won't go into it, my friends. Some of you have heard the story before. The only bright side of that experience was it was so disruptive in causing PTSD and then causing my complex PTSD, the childhood trauma, to sort of get out of the genie bottle. I couldn't get, I couldn't even function after that. I did have a concussion, but it was so much more than that. I had like this huge, like full nervous system trauma reaction, and nobody then knew what it was. But because I just was everything was so bad for me when all of that happened, but it became necessary for me to learn something new. And that's when somebody showed me the daily practice techniques I teach that have helped me so much to sort of calm all those symptoms, those signs of trauma. Hey, I'm jumping in for just a second to tell you that you're invited to take my free daily practice course. It's short, it's easy, it's just 2 techniques that can help you release the harsh thoughts and feelings that swirl around in your mind when something triggers you, so that you can have more clarity, more focus, more ease inside. Doesn't that sound good? I want to show you how to do this. Click the free daily practice link in the second line of the description section below. So they're still there. They will still activate for me, but they're not as strong. They're not as strong. And I'm better at recognizing when they're happening. And recognizing that you're in the middle of a trauma symptom is half the battle to not reacting from that place. So that's really important. Number 8, if you had a really damaging childhood, you might notice that whether you're feeling abandoned or you're catastrophizing or you're lashing out or you're like too suppressed to speak up when someone offends you, but then you have trouble telling, am I being mistreated or is it just me? That is a sign of trauma. You literally lose your bearings on whether am I overreacting to something or am I underreacting? Should I be angry and calling the police or should I just shut my mouth and say I'm sorry for acting angry? Literally, it can be that like black and white in our thinking and our experience of trying to understand why am I upset. And it's really hard when you can't trust your gut like that. You can't trust your inner compass to just know like when something's wrong and you need to get away from somebody. So that's where a lot of the difficulties that we have in our lives as a consequence of all these trauma symptoms gets in. Right, number 9, you get into relationships so fast, just so fast. and then you can't leave. And you get in fast. I'll tell you why, because there's an attachment wound. There's just like this big yawning need for love that's there, that you get anything that even like remotely seems like love, even, you know, you don't really like them. You can tell they're not really available, but, oh, we can push that over to the side. We can attach right now. And the biggest way we attach is through sex. I'm telling you, if you can delay that, you can have more time. It buys you more time to get to know somebody, see the red flags, and very elegantly go, not this relationship for me. People don't believe me till they try it. It's a very powerful way to stay out of the just, you know, high drama relationships that so many of us spend years of our lives sucked into. But the thing is that attachment wound gets us in fast. Here's the trouble. The abandonment wound makes it feel impossible to leave. So I don't know about you, but this is something I used to do. I'd end up with somebody really fast, and within a day, I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. But I already couldn't leave because my abandonment melange was just like right under the surface, just like, I'm going to get really depressed if you walk away from this. Like there was something about endings I just couldn't deal with. That's abandonment melange. It's a sign that you were damaged in childhood. All right, number 10, you seem to attract people who are unavailable, not right for you, or flat out dangerous. But it's hard for you to detect this. You can't see the red flags. So the last one sort of pointed to this one, that you can't see the red flags once you've attached. There's like this cloud that comes over your mind. I can't see it because I can't leave. I really can't face the reality of these red flags, meaning quite obviously this can't work out. And so those of us who had trauma, this is a very specific sign. We do end up quite often attaching to. Attachment doesn't mean they love us back, but it sometimes means we're sort of mixed up with them or having a friends with benefits thing, or limerent on people who are unavailable, not right for you, or dangerous. This is how it happens. All right, number 11, this is a very specific sign that you were damaged in childhood, and it's that you have problems with clutter. Clutter is so often a reaction to trauma. You'll see it come up when somebody has lost a loved one. You'll see it come up in somebody who was abused as a kid and really hasn't had the opportunity to unpack that and recover from it and get their present day identity rooted. And so, you know, you can sort of psychologize it or try to explain, why do people do that? They love the objects or they want to hold people out. Who knows? I don't think those cookie cutter answers are right for everyone. I just know that if you have a lot of clutter up to the level of hoarding, or your house smells bad because of food or garbage that hasn't been removed, or it's difficult to walk, or, you know, I would say just like the core thing is, do you feel like you can't really have people over? Are you using physical clutter as a way to barricade yourself from the stress of dealing with people? Because they are stressful. I know. But there are other ways to do that. There are other ways to have boundaries around yourself, to protect yourself, and be able to let people in, you know, symbolically by having them in the living room, or to let people in emotionally. And life is a grind when you don't have people who you can be close to like that. And that's one of the hardest things about being a traumatized person, and it was for me until I found a way to heal, was my need to hold people, you know, push them away either through my negative behaviors or isolating, just because being close to people was so triggering for me. And I didn't know why. I didn't know if it was just me. I didn't know if I was being mistreated. It was some of both, you know, sometimes, but I didn't know. And I felt bad about myself, and I felt overwhelmed. So sometimes when you start practicing your self-regulation, re-regulating your nervous system and your emotions, when you learn to set boundaries, when you start to be empowered to express yourself, this other stuff gets easier, like your living space. So you'll see what happens. All right, number 12, your home has blank walls and nothing that's really right for you among your belongings. Like, you know, it came from a thrift store or it was a gift, but it was never, like, very few of your things are something that you said, I love that. I really want to have that. I'm going to pay decent money for like the right thing for that and not have to have a cheap version of it. So I really have a long history of this. I've shared with you before these beautiful teal velvet curtains in my studio that were $500 on sale from Anthropologie. And I waited months for them to come from Romania, where they were made for me. and I love them, and they darken my studio with this beautiful fabric. And it's one of the few things in my home that really reflect something that I loved and wanted. The home itself is something I loved and wanted. But a lot of my belongings they're something that somebody was giving away. I mean, I'm torn, right? I want to be thrifty. I don't like spending money unnecessarily. I think it's wasteful. And there's a lot of objects and belongings that I just don't care about. I wear the same pair of earrings. They're a good pair of earrings. They were a gift, but I wear them constantly. I don't think I've changed them in a year. And I like that. I like the simplicity of that. But on the other hand, it's the blank walls. And so my husband and I have been living in this house almost 2 years, and we found like 2 pictures. We have dozens of them all stacked up in in this closet, but we haven't hung them because both of us have this like thing where we're like, I don't know if we're really going to stay here. I don't know if we should damage the walls. But even the pictures that we have, very few of them I actually like. A lot of them were stuff that I found. We have this place in Berkeley called Urban Ore, and people can just bring their junk there. It's sort of like a thrift shop, but it's more like a junkyard. And so you can find like nuts and bolts and old like electrical cables that go to a toaster from 30 years ago. You could find things. It's fabulous. And then they have all these old pictures, and I'm always like, oh, that circus poster with the big hole in the middle. Like I could just sort of like hang it up anyway. My husband was like, no pictures with holes in the middle. Oh, it just seems so unfair. Or some of you have heard the story of the silverware I found on the street. And we have tons of silverware, but I was like, well, you never know. And somebody we know might just be getting started in life and they need the silverware. And he's like, well, somebody who is in that place will find it back out on the street where you can put it. And I was so proud of myself. I put this thing it wasn't like fancy silverware. It was serviceable, but it was complete. If you were just starting out, it would be great for you. But he helped me understand, like, oh yeah, like I might meet somebody like that, or somebody like that might find the silverware and choose it for themselves. So I put it back out there because otherwise I'd be a bit of a clutterer. Now, part of my childhood trauma was I grew up poor and we did not have the things we needed. And bringing people over to the house could be very embarrassing. It could bring up a lot of shame. And I remember once I had a friend over and we wanted to eat some cereal, and we didn't have any clean spoons. Our house was just really dirty. It was cluttered and like gross. The grown-ups either were drinking or completely messed up trying to make enough money to support all the drinking. And we weren't getting cared for a lot. And there were no clean spoons. And we took out these they were like ladles for soup, sort of big things. And we ate like that. And I remember telling my friend, I go, I do this on purpose because I really like Pippi Longstocking. We're going to be Pippi Longstocking today. And I would try to convince friends that this was actually really cool. But I was embarrassed. And I guess on the plus side, it's helped me feel relatedness and a lack of hyper attachment to material stuff. I'm just like glad to have a clean spoon is a very nice thing to have, and some cereal to eat too. So if you have this thing where you feel like life is always temporary, you might have that where you haven't put things on the walls, you don't really have appropriate furniture, or it came with the place, or it's like suitable for a dorm room but not for where you are in life, or you might even have a lot of stuff still in boxes, or things that belong to somebody else, or that you found on the street, even if you can afford to buy one that doesn't have fleas and stains on it, right? Things you love, things that are appropriate, things that you could have for the rest of your life. Yeah. Once you have a little bit of money and can buy a sofa that you love, I gotta say, I'd really like to have one. I was gonna say it's really nice to have, but we have sort of a stopgap sofa. But my kids are in their early 20s, and we got the sofa while they were teens, and I just felt like, well, what's the point in having nice fabric when they're just gonna spill junk on it all the time anyway? And I was right. There's all these like pink stains on it, and maybe it's time for us to get a sofa. But honestly, I don't want to spend the money. So there you have it. Okay. So these are very specific. Complex PTSD, that's the kind that comes from chronic ongoing exposure to stress in kids. It can express itself in different ways, but there's a pattern to it. And so most of us who have these trauma symptoms think that we were just kind of like the weird kid. And when we find out that our symptoms follow a very normal, common pattern for people who grew up the way we did, oh, it feels great. It feels really relieving to just know, okay, this is normal. This is a normal reaction to trauma. So if you're having some of these, please know that you didn't do anything wrong. Your nervous system is like a human nervous system and reacts in kind of predictable patterns. There's some variation, of course, because we're each different. The good news is once you know what's at the root of these problems, you zoom way ahead in your healing. You're like, oh, it's a thing. It's caused by trauma. I didn't cause it. Okay, right then your healing just goes, right up close to the top of the Chutes and Ladders game. There's ladders, right? Oh no, someone broke up with me. No. It has super specific science, CPTSD does. With practice, you can recognize them when they're happening, and this will help you heal.